Bueno, aquí vamos. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, this is Santiago Zapata. I am the lead developer of OpenArthurianX6, and today we are going to continue the development of the game, of the engine rather, as we approach the completion of the milestones plan. Last week we finished milestone 8, and also we announced the release of the source code. So the source code is now available and you can check it out at GitHub. We are looking forward for more people to start using the engine to create their projects or to start creating their projects. Initially, we're going to provide support via Discord for the initial projects that decide to use the engine. So if you're interested in making a game similar to Ultima 6 or just a classic RPG, you are welcome to contact us on the Discord or Twitter or anywhere and let us know about it, and we're glad to help. Um, you can toy around and check the source code, and if you want to play around with it a little bit, just let me know and I will help you set up the project. And with that said, let's continue with milestone 9. So milestone 9, let's check the milestone plan here. Milestone 9 is about traveling from a part of the world to another. The main important part here is the fragmentation of the map. So right now we are using tiled for this, and we have maps made in tiled, and these maps, this is for instance the one where you start. You can see that here's the circle of stones. This is where you start, and this is Shamino, your friend, the first friend that you met, and here are the guards that you fight against. But right now, there's like a scripted sequence, and when you defeat these guards, or well, actually it's after some turns, uh, you are going to be teleported away to this map, and yeah, this is just a test map. I mean, this is where we're testing other stuff. So what we are going to try to achieve in the following sessions is that teleport is no longer going to happen. And instead, what's going to happen in the scripted sequence is that these enemies will disappear because that's what happens in the story. And um, then you're going to continue traveling, and like a fraction of the map, probably not all this, just a little bit. And then you'll appear on the other map, right? On the east side. Oh, rather, well, the player is not going to notice the division of these two maps. For him, it's going to be just like a single map. And the rationale behind this is that, yeah, we're looking forward to create, to make the player believe or feel that this is like a huge map, entire world map. Um, but technically, it's much easier to have separate maps. You know, like we could create like a huge, like gigantic tiled map. I don't know what the size of Ultima 6 map, but um, we could do that. But that's not very optimal in terms of memory, mainly, I guess. It's also pretty lazy. We are also targeting um, mobile. So I don't know. I mean, it makes sense to be smarter about it and have fragments of the map. In any case, since this is a library, I mean, a developer could choose to not do this at all and just create a huge map, or maybe have like a structure that is different, that is not an open world, but rather like a stacked levels or something like that. Um, but yeah, anyways, well, say well, here we see that the Ultima 6 map is 1024 by 1024. That's not that big, I guess. I don't know. Um, right now our maps are like, how big is this? It's like, let's see, map, precise map, 64 by 64. Yeah, so I mean, you could create like a new map here in tile, new map, and say that it's like this, I guess. Yeah, it's probably going to be huge. And then you could like edit the entire map here. But yeah, that, as I mentioned, it's not optimal, and that's not what we're going to do. So let's not do that. I'm going to close this, and let's continue with this idea. So the first thing we're going to do is, for this to work, as far as I know, it's better to have like maps that are the same size. This one's like rectangular, and actually I see that this leftmost part is pretty empty. We don't need this part. So I'm going to resize the map, and I'm going to split this into two maps. Yeah, that's a good idea. So let's do that. Let's split this into two maps. We're going to keep then 32 by 32 because I like that, I know. So yeah, let's split that. Um, right now, this is probably 64 by 32. Yeah, oh, 96 by 48. Let's use 48 by 48. No, let me confirm that. Let's use whatever this is. This map is 64 by 64. That's probably big enough. Let's use that. All right. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to resize this to 64. Height. And oh, I don't know. Yeah, 32 by 32. Maybe a little bit too small. I mean, nowadays we don't need to go that far. Of course, in the 80s, the memory restrictions on the computers required that, but yeah, we don't need that nowadays. So let's go 64 by 64, which means going to actually need this to be 128 by 64, and I'm going to relocate this here, and bear with me. So I'm going to fill, actually, since this is the opaque mask, so the player doesn't actually see anything beyond these trees. I'm going to, you know, I can't fill that with anything. It doesn't matter at all. Let's put some grass, um, just for whatever's. Oh, sorry. I'm going to put that on the tiles 1 layer. It doesn't really matter because it's never going to be displayed, so whatever. Um, and we're going to split this map. So we need a 64 by 64 fragment and another one, same size. So let's do that. I'm not sure if Tile has some way to split the maps. Probably need to do it manually. Um, so let's do that. Let's duplicate this JSON file. Let's save as, and so we're going to have three maps here. This is like the first approach that we're going to do to this map segmentation thing. So let's have I always had west forest and east forest, something like that. So east forest is going to be this one, but we are also going to have west forest. And West Forest is just like this part. So I'm going to resize the map to 64 by 64. And for this West Forest, I'm going to keep this part. And yeah, I'm going to remove objects outside of the map. Let's do that. Yes. Well, it did not remove the objects. They are still here. So we're going to manually, maybe it's a display glitch. No, they are still there. We're going to have to manually remove them in the West Forest. So I forgot how to do that. Select objects maybe. I don't believe, oh yeah, you can do that. Okay, they are gone now. And this West Forest, let us just have this be something that goes like let's remove this, let's edit this solid mask like this. So right now it has some forest there. Let me see what I'm doing. Okay, so solid tiles. Let's remove this mask so that you can walk by there. And let's also the opaque tiles. Let's edit that so that they are not here. Um, and let's remove these trees. So these trees are probably one of these layers. Yeah, here we'll remove them. And we add some trees again. So the trees are somewhere around here. We're going to put them on the same layer. Of course, this is all like super dirty. I will probably revisit this part of map making pretty soon to make it look better. But right now what we need is just like the technical part of it. What we do need is make sure that there are no gaps where the player can walk through or something. And let's add back the solid mask. So we mark all these tiles as solid so that the player cannot walk there. A reminder that is how OpenArthurian represents the map. So instead of there being like a property of the cells of them being opaque or solid, what it does is it has like these special layers that are used to represent like yeah, it's like a mask that represents the places where the player can walk and also the places that are that obstruct the line of sight algorithm. So yeah, that's one way to do it. That's like pretty old now. I mean, I don't know, maybe I made that 2 years ago on the project. But yeah, that's how it is. And we do the same for the opaque tiles. There's a gap here? No, that's fine. Opaque tiles. This is a bit not very exciting, but yeah. So in the future, I mean, when someone's going to be using this to create a full game, it's probably going to be creating like more open style of maps, right? Not this kind of um, directed maps like what we're doing here. But yeah, so that's it. This is our western forest. Let's paint some grass here. I don't know, just that, so that it doesn't look that like that. We can put some dark grass and then around it some of this. I don't know. It doesn't matter. This is going to be replaced afterwards. But it doesn't have to look ugly. We can make it a little bit more lively, I guess. Um, Whatever. This is the West Forest. So we save this and we open again the East Forest. And for this one, we are going to again resize the map to 64 by 64. But this time we want to keep this part. So we put this offset and resize. And in here, I don't think we had to do a lot here. That's how it is. Yeah, we just save here because this map was already done. So we have East Forest, West Forest, and then we also need to do some changes here in Ayalo's hot. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to also resize the map to 64. Oh, actually this is already the correct size. Okay, no changes there. But we do need to make sure that the West Forest can connect with it. So we check here, we see that this is on line or row 29 and row 44. So 29 and 44, we need to check here. You see this map is much more complex because it's a multi-stories map. It has the first floor and then there's the second floor here on Yayolo's hut. But anyways, we need I'm going to turn off all the layers just to make sure that I don't screw things up. And we also only need to deal with the first story because the second story is not related to the connections with the forest or whatever. So 29 and 44, let's see where the trees are. Trees are on the tiles for layers. Let's keep that convention. And let's put some of these trees there very quickly. So they are here in the terrain tile set. And let's look for some trees, some small trees like bushes. 29 and 44. So 29 is here. And 44 is here. So we're going to detour a little bit here. And we're going to remove these trees. And let's also put some trees here, whatever. Actually, we need to, yeah, we can like close this thing here. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that you are leaving over these things here. But we don't need to update the solid mask. And we are going to make these trees solid. We need to put a tree here. And these ones. And we need to remove this soil script up here, and also these are no longer solid. Yeah, like this. And we do need to add some more to the solid mask here and here. And likewise, the opaque mask needs to be updated. Before I forget, I'm going to put that tree that I missed. I missed one tree here. So let's put that in the solid first, and then in the opaque tiles. I don't know what's going to happen with this. Probably we're going to be removing this in the future so that instead of you having to manually handle these masks of opaque and solid, instead of that, that they should be properties of the objects, right? And then all you do is placing these objects, but I worry about the overhead of having so many objects. So right now this is probably a bit lighter memory, maybe, and that is why it's the way it is. But I don't know, not sure about it. Anyways, this is it. As I mentioned, since these masks are going to block the line of sight, it doesn't matter whatever is there is here in the lower part. So yeah. What else? All right. So let's. I think that's it. I mean, from the map's perspective. Uh, so there's not a lot more we need to do in here. So we have our three um, things. So let's go into the code, the fun part. So far, what we have is in this scenarios directory, you have info about the scenario. So you see here we have some configuration and some starting state, including the starting map and the maps themselves, right? I believe for now, let's continue. Let's try to use this as far as we can. So we're going to change this. We're no longer going to have these two maps. We're going to have well, Aiolo's hot can remain, um, but we do need to have some kind of metadata regarding the position of these individual maps in the overall world. So maybe that's going to be automated somehow in the future. But for now, let's put that here. So we're going to say that Aiolos is the well, it's the westmost map. So we're going to put it first. Then we have West Forest, and the file name is westforest.json. And I'm going to change this. So the start position is no longer going to be like part of the map themselves. We're going to move that to the starting state. Yes, let's move that to the starting state. Um, and we no longer start at a map. We no longer start at a given map. We just start in the world. But we do need to say something here like chunk size. Chunk size is going to be 64. This is like the number of tiles uh, that each chunk is going to be. Um, so we need to recalculate what this means, because this is initially, well, we were starting on this map, on the forest map. Let me open that again. And we had that initial position where we started, which was here, 8034, which doesn't match this for some reason. Oh, because, well, that's because I was starting actually in Aiolo's hut, the old version of it, not this new one. And it was somewhere around here, 3427. Yeah, that was here. But we are no longer going to have that. We start at the East Forest here. So it's 4343 in the East Forest. But the East Forest is is the second, right? The third map. So it's going to be something like it's the third map, but it should be like a zero-based index for our purposes, because this is going to be something like this, right? In the world coordinates, the start is going to be in the third map, 43. We can leave it like this here because this isn't actually a JSON file. This is just a JavaScript module, so it can do calculation, so that's fine. Let's remove this. We no longer need this. Yeah, we are probably going to need a completely different starting state. And let's, all right. So this is what we're doing. We're changing the starting position back to the starting state, not the maps. The map no longer have a starting position. That doesn't, because we're not like teleporting from one map to the other. We're just having them be part of a complete global map. And we have the west forest and we have the east forest. That's where we begin. And that this is east forest.json. All right, so that's like the setup and the easy part, because right now we need to update the engine to respond to all these changes that we just did on the data. And that's where the hard part is going to come. So normally the way that this chunks model works is um, the engine is aware of the position of the player, but the global position, right? And then as he gets closer to the edges of the map, so he's walking, say for example, you start here, and then when you walk and you are near this, for example, in this area, the game is going to load the next chunk. And actually, normally you keep like 9 chunks in memory. So this chunk is probably actually loaded from startup to provide easier continuity with the events that are happening there. So if there are enemies here, you don't want them to like pop up, appear very late, right? They may be active even if they are a bit away. Anyways, normally you're keeping like 9 chunks of the map at a time in memory, and then you are recycling that kind of dynamic grid, right? So if the player walks into the west, so the player starts in the center of this grid, and then when he walks to the west, sorry, then he that map that was initially on the left becomes on the center, and the 3 new maps are loaded and to the left, something like that. So we need to do something like that. But we have some problems because everywhere in the code we are currently using the position of the player is inside the level, and we also need to rethink what we mean with level. So right now in the code we have 2 classes, and this class is actually pretty new. The world class. The world class is the world class is pretty new, as I mentioned, and it's right now it's just keeping the time of the day. We have a question here, but before answering that question from Kay, we are going to increase the size of the code. So maybe someone wants to read the code. Okay, that should be good enough, especially for Facebook. For some reason, StreamYard or somewhere down the road, Facebook gets a horrible compression and it's probably unreadable on high definition. Okay, so we have a question from Kay Tila, one of the big contributors of /4 projects. So hi Kay, why limit this to 9 chunks? Um, so well, it's like since this is an orthogonal map, you know, it's like the surrounding chunks, right? So like up, left, left, right, down, left, and down. Um, you could probably load more in memory, but you know that's the cost. The reason is memory optimization. You need to like balance how much of the map you want to be in memory. That includes like the mobs, the enemies, and the NPCs that are in these chunks. They are also active, and you are also simulating them. So yeah, I believe that's like the trade-off you are doing. Like ideally, you could have like the entire world map loaded and all the NPCs acting every turn and every frame, because you know this game is not entirely turn-based. But yeah, you are like dealing with constraints. Computers nowadays have huge amounts of memory and processing power, but still, um, since we're also targeting smaller devices in the future potentially, um, and since we are also working in web, you know, the OpenArthurianX6 modules can run as inside a browser, so you don't want to eat all that RAM. And yeah, that's partly the reason. You just need the surroundings. You could have as many surroundings as you wanted, um, but 9 it should be enough. I hope that answers the question. All right, let's continue. So I have no idea how we're going to do this. We have the world class, which currently only has the minute of the day. And as I mentioned, that is pretty new. That was introduced when we made the latest changes to the NPC schedules, because we needed a way to have what time of the day it was. And that used to be part of the skybox attributes, you know, like this skybox. But that was not a good part to have them. So yeah, but yeah, we moved into the world class, and That is why this world class exists. And then we have the level class. The level class is like the first thing that we had. Um, and this is a level. So historically, only a single level was loaded into memory, and the level had the mobs, the item, the objects, everything. Like it came straight from this file, and that's like everything that existed. There was only one at a time, and right now you see here. Well, I'm not going to do that, but in the current demo version of OpenArthurian, well, you teleport from one level to the other, and there's always one level loaded at a time. But that's precisely what we are not going to need. But I wonder what's the best way. We could remain this level class to chunk, right? So it's no longer going to be um, a level. Uh, but we also need to decide what to do with some stuff here, right? So we have mobs, we have items, doors, objects. These things don't move, right? So it makes a lot of sense to keep them in the chunk data. But the mobs do move, so I don't believe, I mean, it's going to be messy trying to keep track of the mobs and moving them to one level to the other, to one chunk to the other when they walk, right? Especially if they are in in the borders of the chunk. So this is probably going to move to the world class or something. Um, Then there's the question of the stories. So Ultima 6 had this um, thing where you had the overworld, but there was also the underworld. So when you went down somewhere, you were like on a smaller world, which was interconnected with the top world. And right now we have something different because, as I mentioned here, for example, Iola's hat has two stories. So this is the first story, and if then yeah, this is the first story. You know this. I'm going to hide the mask. This is the first floor of the house, and then there's the second story. The second story is this, and then if I shoot down the first story, you're going to see that it's like an independent map, right? And it even has its own solid and opaque mask. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe we can have both things, and it will be like a kind of uh, high differences of altitude. You know, like this is the world map, and each chunk can have different stories, even probably basements or something like that. But there can also be like another world or another world uh, behind it with its own things. But I will not worry about that right now. That's something that may come afterwards. Right now, let's focus on this being like a single uh, level of chunks, or yeah, a single world. So yeah, it looks like probably this will be a chunk, and then probably this is going to move to world somehow, and going to need to be like much less static, you know, because as the players moving between chunks, probably the mobs, once they are far from the player and if they are not NPCs, they are probably going to be discarded, or I don't know, like put in an inactive state or something like that, so that it's not wasting processing power. As Wolanimi mentioned, having everything like the entire world and the, yeah, in this case the monsters or NPCs loaded in memory and running their AS script can, and regardless of the processing power that you have, it's not a smart solution, I think. Um, so yeah, they're probably going to move to the world, and yeah, let's also revisit how we are currently loading the levels. We have the level loader. So right now we have this function that loads a tile map with a given map ID. and recreates everything, and also creates the somewhere around here is probably also creating the mobs, and that brings another thing. So uh, we also are going to need to serialize and be saving and loading from disk the maps constantly. Like this loading should only happen if the chunk the first time the chunk is loaded. Otherwise, it should come like from the version we have stored in memory, maybe. Then again, since we don't have like the player cannot alter the terrain, probably we cannot do that. We can just load it from the tiled map every time, except for the mobs, um, because they are um, like the dynamic portion. But again, yeah, there's no terrain deformation, but there are some things that have state. Some of this state may not be very relevant, like the state of the doors, open, close, whatever. But what about the locked state? Like if there's a door that needs a key, and then you open it and it's unlocked now, and you can that's working right now. But if you drop the key, or I don't know, you no longer need it, the player is going to expect the door to still be unlocked when he travels back. So yeah, for example, that state needs to be kept. And also some other stuff like levers and puzzle state. So yeah, that's something to consider. Will need to restore that state. Maybe it will make sense to also restore the map itself. Um, no, I don't know. That's another question. So there's many things to consider here. This is like the biggest part that is missing before considering the game complete, but it's something that we need to address. Um, but we need to address it like incrementally, because else I'm going to be crazy. Um, so right now, this load tiled map is called here when we create the level and also when we restore the level, because this should also work with the save and load. So this is a good thing. So right now, when we are restoring the game, when you save and load, we are already loading the tiled map, but we're probably also keeping the state of the mob separately. I don't believe we are like restoring the mobs as well, because that will not make a lot of sense. Let's check. Let me see what I mean. So right now, so here, since I just started a new game, I'm going to save the game, and when I journey onward, this NPC Shamino is here. He is not recreated in here. So we are probably handling this somehow already. And this rat, for instance, let's attack this rat. Oh, well, okay, so it's dead. If we save the game, um, oh, well, okay, so I did not continue the game. That was scary. It's dead, still dead. No new rat created. So we are probably, well, not probably, we are handling this already. And probably this load tiled map is just, what is it doing with the mobs? It's just filling the subject, this list of objects. But, and I don't see, okay, so where's that list going? Mobs, mobs, mobs. Here. Okay, so it fills this list. And then it returns all that. And then we are deciding what to do with that tiled map data. Right, so in here, when we are creating a new game, and we're using the create level function here, we use this mob's data to load the mob. This in here we created, but when we are saving the game, when we are restoring a saved game, we are not using that at all. That's a good point. So I believe we can reuse some of these, and probably the first step is going to be starting to rename all these. Like changing and seeing like what we find on our way there when we start renaming stuff and into chunks and levels. Um, because yeah, I see that there's a lot of things that we can reuse from here. We already have saving and loading games, and we already went through all that hell, and it we need that part here because we are going to be doing that, but in this time probably not to the save game of the player, but to some kind of temporary files or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be fun. So what I mean is that instead of creating a level, let's see where this is used. So right now we have create level, and it's used here when we are opening a level. So this could be changed to load a chunk or something like that. And then we have the chunk ID here. And we are keeping, so you see here, we are relocating the player uh, to to the start. We no longer have the starting position for each chunk, for instance. So this is something that we would no longer need. Yeah. And open level, where is it used? Yeah, so since we are not using TypeScript, well, Visual Studio could not figure it out. We're using this in two parts. So level loader is used when we create a new game. It's just loading uh, that map, that level that we told it. Um, and then in here, this is like a trigger. So this is actually what happens at the end of the first level currently, where after that this is part of a script sequence, and we are teleporting to this new level because right now there's no other transition. So this is going to change. As I mentioned, we are no longer going to teleport. Instead, we are not going to use this trigger, but if we use this trigger, that's not something that would be exposed to the script sequences because the concept of a chunk is internal. That's not something that the game designer would see. But yeah, so right now we have this here. In a new game, we are opening a level. So first off, the concept of a level is going to be gone. And we're going to change this to chunk loader. And I believe one first step to work on this is we're going to load the first chunk. Yes, right? We need to, based on the player's position, what is the initial chunk? And that is why we have this configuration here, chunk size, because just dividing by that um, we get we're going to be storing the player position in world coordinates. That is what we're going to be handling. But we are going to need to find out in many places what that world position corresponds to in chunks. So in here, we'll have something like chunk X and chunk Y. And it's actually players dot X directly, probably, yeah. divided by the chunk size, which I don't know where it is right now. Probably should be part of the configuration of the game. I will say something like this: work.chunk size. Chunk X and chunk Y, something like this. And then we're going to do something like chunk loader dot open chunk, and it's going to receive chunk X and chunk Y instead of a name of a map. And yeah, open chunk X and chunk Y. And yeah, there's no longer going to be a map ID, but we're going to create a map ID using these chunk sizes. So the map ID is going to be uh, chunk chunk mm, chunk X dash chunk Y. That's going to be the map ID. And for now, yeah, as I mentioned, we're gonna do this incrementally. So let's go step by step. We're going to be reusing a lot of these. They are kept in memory, and they are created if we need to create them. But what we need is create chunk. Create chunk. Map data is fetched from the maps. What is this? Okay, so this is what takes the configuration. And yeah, we're going to need something more here for each one of these chunks. For now, probably in the future, this is going to change. But for now, let's put the chunk coordinates here. So this is the first one, this is the second one, and this is the third one. And I mentioned that because in here, that's going to be stored here in the maps. The maps no longer have a name. The name of the so this map that we're using in memory, the only reason why it exists is because we're referencing that here, and it's indexed by the name of the map. I don't think we need a name for these maps anymore. Maybe for some descriptive purpose. Let's leave it there, but we are not going to be using it. We're going to instead recalculate this map ID here, and we're going to index this. We're going to index this dictionary memory or this mapping memory, creating a map ID using the X and Y attributes of the chunk, and that's what we're going to use to index it. And then we can refer to that here using the map ID. That's correct. And that same map ID is going to be used in these levels structure in memory. Yeah, as I mentioned, this no longer needs to be done. In here, for instance, you see this is going to change because the levels are no longer going to handle the mobs. It's going to be part of the world. Levels are no longer going to be containing the mobs list. So that's all. Like all this is going to change. Level.activate all. What it does is activate the mobs. But again, that's not something that that the level is going to do. So one thing we need to do is move away all mob handling from level and into world. That's one thing that is a big important thing. And yeah, that's something that we need to do. Um, this to do verify this works is because right now we don't have a scenario where the player navigates back to an existing level right now in OpenArthurian, because the only transition right now is one way. So I'm not sure it works at all, and we're going to probably going to see that a lot change a lot now that we're working on this chunks part. Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to rename this. So level loader is not going to be, is now going to be chunk loader. And I mean, if you can have a single chunk, you know, if the game you're making doesn't require this huge open world map, you can have a single chunk, or like teleport to chunks to teleport. So right now, if you wanted to have like a game that is like a stack of levels, you know, probably you could create different worlds. So the it's weird because the current concept of level in some ways is not now going to be similar to the world. Um, anyways, so chunk loader, open chunk, um, open level is going to change to open chunk. I'm going to change that here manually. We're going to manually change all this whole chunk. This is where a lot of stuff is going to fail probably. So the player currently has a reference to the level. Not sure why. All that's probably going to change to the world. Um, open chunk. As I mentioned, this no longer makes sense. This would be something like open world, because that's what or I don't know, maybe teleport to world. And yeah, I will implement this later, but that's not something that is related to this iteration. So for now, I'm just going to not do anything there. Promise function by default is nothing. Let's resolve. Let's just resolve. So promise function for this is going to be just a resolution that does nothing. Open level. So here it is. Here it is. This is the script sequence used at the end of the battle. This is going to change. So we need to change this to teleport enemies, or yeah, because that's what's going to happen. Remove enemies from the map. Report the world. Okay. Let's see what else. So level loader is now chunk loader. I don't know what that was here. Let's see it there. Load game. I don't know. Chunk loader dot restore chunk, but what we need to do here is something similar to what we do here. Actually, that's the same file. It's probably nearby. Here, yeah. It's completely the same. The chunk that we need to restore is this one. Chunk X and chunk key. The world is the can come from the player. It's going to fail. It's absolutely going to fail at the start. But yeah. Chunk loader, start game. Okay, this is straightforward. And just for fun, this is not going to be needed. Okay. Then, as I mentioned, everywhere we refer to level is now a chunk. So this, for instance, is a call to make all the mobs, all the hostile mobs in the level to become active. And this is currently used so that these guards that are here in the beginning, they are kind of deactivated at the beginning, and then when that part is triggered, then they become active and attack you. Yeah, I know. Door. When you open a door, so each door has a level, it's going to have a chunk now. And the chunk should be able to get the door at some position. Yeah, this is also straightforward. And again, the mobs. I'm going to be changing the straightforward parts first. So chunk is the chunk. Sister door is kept by the chunk. This is the mobs part. The chunk have the solid and opaque mask. The chunks have the doors, so that's fine. So everything that is not related to mobs, I believe we can straightforward change this, that the mobs are going to have a reference to the chunk, not to the level. Drag item. Ooh, that's going to be fun. Dragging items is complex, so not sure what's going to happen when this is in the chunk level. We'll see. I guess if the size of the chunks are big enough that they are not like that they can be contained in the viewport, that we're going to be fine. Chunk, 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 chunk. Level is now a chunk. Yeah, rename it to chunk. Chunk. Actually, I hope chunk doesn't mean anything weird in English. Let's say chunk. Not big, solid piece. So divide something. Section. Okay, we're fine. Section of information or data. That's good. It's actually like a world chunk, I guess, but let's not be verbose. Chunk is level container. What does this mean? So, this is due to the unstructured nature of JavaScript. The chunks or the levels right now can contain items. Interesting. Let's just rename the chunk. Yeah, that's going to be safe. And also here. Let's resume our journey of renaming everything. Everything that is not related initially to to mobs. To mobs. Thank you, Kay. Yeah. Chunk is a piece of something. Okay. Mobs. No. Yeah, here, yeah, we'll rename this to chunk. Of course, we're going to break all existing save games, but at this point, we are not worrying about that. Chunk, 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 chunk. My level is now a chunk. This act. So acting, this is part of the mobs aspect of things. So this is something that we're going to do afterwards. Okay. Level loader is now chunk loader. We're also going to rename this file. Level.class is now chunk.class. Update imports. No, let's not do that here because things can go messy. No, thank you. I'm going to do it manually, one step at a time. Level loader is now chunk loader. It loads a single chunk. I'm going to put that here. This class loads a single chunk of the world from a tiled file plus metadata, because yeah, there's metadata. Let's continue. Level. Oh, yeah, this is chunk. These dot levels, yeah, no longer levels, chunks. Loading chunk. That chunk. If these the chunks, then the chunk it comes from the map. Oh, sorry. Screwing up here. Chunks. Chunk. Here the chunk is the chunk. Not really. No, this is part. Well, I guess no. The mobs should not keep a reference to the part of what we're going to change. So we leave it there for now. What else is here on this? All this is going to be changed. Create chunk. In chunk data or map data. Chunk is a new chunk. Chunk.mapid chunk.mapid. That's interesting. No, I don't think we need to keep this. I think the map ID is now going to be the chunk X and chunk Y. It may be troublesome to have this here because I see that in some other places we are when it's being restored, we are using that. So that may be troublesome, really. Where was that? Here. Yeah. I don't know. I don't like that. No, I believe I'm going to change that. So the map ID is going to be chunk X and chunk Y, and that comes from map data. So it's map data.x and map data.y. And that is but that is what we are going to store in the map ID. And again, load tiled map. Huh. Load tile map takes map data.name as the map ID. No, we're going to reuse the map ID. Huh. Interesting. All right. So there comes more surprises. Yes, yes, yeah. So right now in the loader, where do we load the phaser maps? Okay. Oh, okay. So here's the thing. Somewhere we are using phasers built-in routines to load the tiled maps. And that gives each tiled map an ID. But yeah, it's not that big of a deal. What's going to happen here is that I'm lost now. Here, load tile maps. We need the map ID here instead of that name. That name's just going to be something descriptive. So let's keep the map ID here and use it here, but also here. Let's continue. Yeah, so we create the chunk by loading the tiled map using that map ID. And I want to make sure that we are not screwing up. We are creating a new tile map using that ID. Where are we accessing the actual map data? That is like my question. Somewhere. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Map. Okay. So here's the thing. Yeah. When the game loads, we are loading all these tile maps. And actually, that's a good question. This is probably something that we should do in the fly, not at startup, because else we are doing all this for nothing. If we are loading all the maps um, in memory, because I believe that that's what it does. This does. Then the effect of on the memory is going to be minor. Probably still worth it, but yeah. Load on the fly. But as I mentioned, baby steps. So in here we need to calculate that map ID again. Yeah, like this. And save it there. So map ID is going to be this. That is how we're going to load it and refer to it everywhere. All right, but we are already over the hour, so I believe that concludes the session for today. Tomorrow we will continue having fun. Everything is completely screwed up right now, and it's probably going to take some session for this to stabilize again. But hopefully tomorrow we are going to be able to load that single chunk where the player starts and start like that dissection of moving all the mob handling outside the level class. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.